What if Vader returned to Mustafar? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Darth Vader's TIE fighter screams through hyperspace toward the one place he swore never to return, Mustafar, the volcanic world where Anakin Skywalker died, where Darth Vader was born in agony and flame, where everything changed forever. But today, something is different. Today, Vader isn't going to Mustafar as a conqueror or destroyer. He's going as a broken man haunted by visions that won't stop, dreams that tear at his mind every single night. The Emperor has no idea where his most trusted enforcer is heading. No one does. This is a journey Vader must make alone. As the swirling blue tunnel of hyperspace gives way to real space, the orange and red sphere of Mustafar fills his viewport like a malevolent eye. Nothing has changed. The lava flows still snake across its surface. The mining facilities still scar its landscape. But for the first time in 20 years, Vader feels something he thought was dead. Fear. Not fear of death, not fear of pain, but fear of memory. Fear of what he might discover about himself in this place of fire and transformation. His ship descends through the sulfurous atmosphere, past the industrial complexes that have grown like metal tumors on the planet's surface. The Empire has turned even his personal hell into a source of profit. How fitting. But as his landing sensors sweep the surface, they detect something unexpected. Fresh landing marks, recent disturbances. Someone else is here, someone waiting for him. The meditation chamber aboard the Superstar Destroyer Executor had been Vader's sanctuary for years, its obsidian walls reflecting the faint glow of distant stars streaming past the massive vessel's viewports. But lately, it had become a prison of memories. Each meditation session bringing visions more vivid and terrifying than the last. The dreams have been growing stronger with each passing cycle, more vivid and insistent than ever before. Every time he closes his eyes, whether in meditation or in the rare moments when exhaustion overtakes even his enhanced physiology, he sees it with crystalline clarity. The volcanic hellscape of Mustafar, the industrial mining facility where his former life ended in agony and flame, where Anakin Skywalker died screaming in hatred and pain, and where Darth Vader was forged in the crucible of betrayal and loss. He sees the molten rivers snaking across the planet's scarred surface like glowing arteries of liquid fire. He feels the oppressive heat that penetrated even his environmental suit. He hears the mechanical grinding of the mining equipment that provided the backdrop to the most catastrophic duel in galactic history. And always, he hears Obi-Wan's voice echoing across the years, filled with anguish and disappointment. You were the chosen one. It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them. Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. Vader tries desperately to push these visions away, to focus on his duties to Emperor Palpatine, on the endless task of hunting down the remaining Jedi scattered across the galaxy, like dying embers of a once great fire. But the memories persist, rising from the depths of his consciousness, like magma bubbling up from Mustafar's molten core. They refuse to be suppressed, refuse to be forgotten, refuse to be buried beneath 2 decades of Imperial service and Sith training. The irony is not lost on him that he, who has become the Empire's most effective weapon against Force-sensitive beings, should be haunted by the very place where his sensitivity to the Force had been both his salvation and his damnation. Mustafar, where the Force had kept him alive long enough for his master to find him, burned and broken on the banks of a lava river. Mustafar, where his connection to the Force had been forever altered, twisted by pain and loss into something darker than he had ever imagined possible. A soft chime pierces the silence of his meditation, causing Vader to straighten in his chair. The holographic projector built into the chamber's central console flickers to life, displaying the nervous figure of an Imperial Navy commander. The man's uniform is impeccable, his posture rigid with military discipline. But Vader can sense the fear radiating from him, like heat from a reactor core. Even through the hologram, the Dark Lord's presence is sufficiently intimidating to reduce seasoned officers to stammering children. Lord Vader, the commander begins, his voice carefully controlled, but betraying the slightest tremor of anxiety. I apologize for interrupting your meditation, but we have received intelligence that requires your immediate attention. Vader's breathing apparatus cycles loudly in the confined space, the mechanical rhythm that has become his heartbeat for over 20 years. Speak. We have intercepted a series of encrypted rebel transmissions originating from the Mustafar system. The commander continues, consulting his datapad with hands that shake almost imperceptibly. Our cryptographers have only been able to decode fragments, but the intelligence suggests the presence of a high-value target, possibly a surviving Jedi attempting to establish a base of operations in the Outer Rim territories. The words hit Vader like a physical blow. Of all the systems in the galaxy, of all the thousands of worlds where rebels might choose to hide, it had to be Mustafar. The Force, it seems, has a sense of irony that borders on cruelty. He can feel his master's presence at the edge of his consciousness, the Emperor's yellow eyes seeming to peer into his very soul, even across the vast distances of space. Does Palpatine know? Has he orchestrated this somehow, as he has orchestrated so many other events that have shaped Vader's life? The commander shifts uncomfortably in the hologram, mistaking Vader's silence for displeasure. Shall we dispatch a Star Destroyer to investigate the system, my lord? The Devastator is currently conducting patrol operations in the Corellian sector and could be redirected to Mustafar within 36 standard hours. No. The word cuts through the air like a vibroblade, sharp and final. The commander's eyes widen slightly at the vehemence in Vader's voice. I will handle this matter personally. Prepare my ship immediately. The officer's confusion is palpable, even through the holographic interface. It is highly unusual for the Dark Lord to personally investigate what appears to be a routine intelligence-gathering mission. Vader typically reserves his personal attention for matters of the highest importance, leaving lesser threats to be dealt with by Star Destroyer commanders and their legions of stormtroopers. My lord, with respect, our analysts believe this to be a relatively minor threat. Surely a single Jedi, if indeed that is what we are dealing with, does not warrant your personal intervention. The local Imperial garrison should be more than sufficient to. You question my judgment, Commander? Vader's voice drops to a dangerous whisper, and even through the hologram, the temperature in the chamber seems to drop several degrees. The commander immediately stiffens, his face pale. Of course not, Lord Vader. Your ship will be prepared immediately. Shall I arrange for an escort, a squadron of TIE fighters perhaps, or I will go alone? Vader's tone brooks no argument. Inform Admiral Piet that he has operational command of the fleet until my return. No one is to follow me to Mustafar. No one is to monitor my communications. Is that understood? Perfectly, my lord. Your orders will be carried out immediately. The hologram flickers and dies, leaving Vader alone once again with his thoughts and memories. He sits in silence for several long minutes, his hands gripping the armrests of his meditation chair with enough force to leave permanent impressions in the reinforced metal. The prospect of returning to Mustafar terrifies him in ways that lightsaber duels and space battles never could. Physical pain he has learned to endure, even embrace. Emotional pain, the kind that cuts deeper than any weapon, remains his greatest weakness. But perhaps it is time. Perhaps the Force is calling him back to that place of fire and transformation for a reason. Perhaps there are wounds that can only be healed by confronting the source of the injury, demons that can only be exorcised by facing them in their lair. Or perhaps this is simply another test, another trial designed by his master to measure his loyalty and commitment to the dark side of the Force. Vader rises from his chair, his cape billowing behind him as he strides toward the chamber's exit. Whatever awaits him on Mustafar, he will face it, as he has faced every challenge since that fateful day when Anakin Skywalker died, screaming on a river of lava, with power, with determination, and with the absolute certainty that the dark side will provide him with the strength to overcome any obstacle. The journey to Mustafar aboard his modified TIE Advanced Zone feels both eternal and instantaneous, time seeming to bend and flow like the space-time distortions around a black hole. Vader pilots the sleek fighter alone through the hyperspace lanes, his hands steady on the controls, despite the turmoil raging within his mind. The ship's advanced navigation systems guide him unerringly toward his destination. But his thoughts are focused on the past, on memories that have been locked away in the deepest vaults of his consciousness for over 2 decades. He remembers the Clone Wars, when he and Obi-Wan would pilot similar ships into battle against the Separatist fleets. How different everything had seemed then, when the galaxy was divided between clear lines of good and evil. When the Republic stood for justice and freedom. When the Jedi Order represented hope and peace. How naive he had been, how blind to the rot that had already begun to consume the institutions he had sworn to protect. But even those dark thoughts cannot compare to the memories that await him at his destination. Mustafar had been chosen as the site for the massacre of the Separatist leadership precisely because of its isolation and hostility. A volcanic world on the edge of civilized space, home to nothing but mining operations and automated facilities. The perfect place for dirty work that needed to be done away from prying eyes. As the swirling blue tunnel of hyperspace gives way to the stark reality of normal space, Vader finds himself staring at the distinctive orange and red sphere of Mustafar, hanging before him like a malevolent eye. The planet has not changed in 20 years, still wreathed in clouds of volcanic ash and sulfurous gases, still pockmarked with the glowing wounds of active volcanoes and lava flows. From orbit, it looks exactly as it did when he last saw it, when he departed as a broken man in a life support suit, more machine than human. But as his ship descends through the planet's turbulent atmosphere, Vader notices subtle changes that speak to the passage of time and the Empire's utilitarian approach to resource exploitation. The mining facilities have been expanded significantly. Automated systems extracting precious metals and rare minerals from the planet's volcanic activity with ruthless efficiency. Imperial installations dot the surface like metallic parasites, feeding off the planet's geological wealth while contributing nothing to its harsh beauty. The irony is not lost on him. The that the empire he serves has turned even this place of personal tragedy into a source of profit. Mustafar's suffering, like his own, has been commodified and exploited for the greater glory of Emperor Palpatine's vision of order. Perhaps that is fitting. Perhaps everything in the galaxy exists only to serve the Emperor's will, even the sites of former Jedi defeats and Sith victories. Vader sets his fighter down on a landing platform that overlooks the main mining complex, the same facility where he had once confronted the Separatist leadership in the final hours of the Clone Wars. The platform is larger now, expanded to accommodate the heavy transport ships that carry Mustafar's mineral wealth to Imperial shipyards throughout the galaxy. But the basic structure remains the same, and as he powers down his ship's engines, he can almost hear the echoes of blaster fire and lightsaber clashes that once filled these corridors. Stepping out of his fighter, Vader is immediately assaulted by the planet's oppressive environment. The heat is intense, even through his environmental suit, carrying with it the acrid smell of sulfur and burning rock. The air shimmers with thermal distortions rising from the lava, flows that snake through the landscape like glowing rivers of destruction. In the distance, he can hear the rumble of volcanic activity, a constant reminder of the planet's violent nature. But it is not the physical environment that affects him most powerfully. It is the presence he senses in the Force, a familiar signature that cuts through the planet's natural electromagnetic interference like a lightsaber through durasteel. Someone is here, someone he knows, someone whose connection to the Force burns with a clarity and purpose that stands in stark contrast to the dark side energies that have claimed this world. Vader draws his lightsaber, the crimson blade springing to life with its distinctive snap hiss, casting eerie red shadows on the metallic walls of the facility. He advances cautiously through the corridors, his enhanced senses alert for any sign of danger. The mining complex is largely automated, staffed by droids and a skeleton crew of Imperial technicians who are nowhere to be seen. Perhaps they have been evacuated, or perhaps they are simply wise enough to stay out of the way when Sith Lords come calling. As he moves deeper into the complex, Vader finds himself retracing the path he had taken 20 years ago, when he had hunted down and executed the Separatist leadership on Emperor Palpatine's orders. These same corridors had witnessed his transformation from Jedi Knight to Sith Lord, from Protector to Destroyer, from Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader. Every step takes him closer to the past he has tried so desperately to forget. The main control room looms ahead, its massive transparasteel windows providing a panoramic view of Mustafar's hellish landscape. Lava flows stretched to the horizon, broken only by the skeletal structures of mining equipment and the occasional geyser of superheated gas. It is here, in this very room, that he had stood over the bodies of Newt Gunray and the other Separatist leaders, their life forces snuffed out by his lightsaber in the name of bringing peace to the galaxy. But the room is not empty. A figure emerges from the shadows near the main control console, moving with the fluid grace of a trained warrior. She is middle-aged now, her once vibrant blue and white headtails streaked with gray, her face marked by the lines that come from years of struggle and loss. But her eyes still burn with the same determination and compassion that he remembers from their time together during the Clone Wars. "Ahsoka," he says, her name emerging from his vocabulator like a whisper carried on the wind. Ahsoka Tano steps forward, her twin lightsabers remaining unignited, but clearly within easy reach at her sides. She moves without fear, approaching him as she might approach any old friend, as if the 20 years of separation and the darkness that has consumed him are merely obstacles to be overcome rather than insurmountable barriers. "Hello, Anakin," she replies, her voice carrying the same warmth and affection he remembers from their countless missions together. "I've been waiting for you. Anakin Skywalker is dead." Vader responds automatically, the words he has spoken 1,000 times to 100 different adversaries. "I destroyed him long ago. Only Vader remains." Ahsoka tilts her head slightly, a gesture so familiar that it sends an unexpected jolt of recognition through his consciousness. "Did you? Then why are you here, Master?" Why return to this place of all places? Vader would have sent Star Destroyers, legions of stormtroopers, an entire fleet to deal with a single Jedi fugitive. But you came yourself. You came alone. Why? The question hangs in the air between them like a challenge. And, for a moment, Vader finds himself unable to respond. His breathing grows heavier, the mechanical rhythm of his life support system becoming more pronounced in the silence of the control room. She is right, of course. The logical response would have been to dispatch overwhelming force to deal with whatever threat Mustafar might pose. Instead, he had insisted on coming personally. Driven by compulsions he does not fully understand. "You are trespassing in Imperial space," he finally manages, his voice regaining some of its customary authority. "Surrender now, and your execution will be swift and painless." "I'm not here to fight you, Anakin," Ahsoka says, taking another step closer. "I'm here because the Force led me here. Because after all these years, I can still sense him inside you. The man who trained me, who protected me, who taught me what it means to be a Jedi. The man who cared about justice and freedom and doing what's right. Even when it's difficult, that man was weak." Vader's voice thunders through the chamber, the force of his emotions causing loose debris to rattle on the floor. He was betrayed by those he trusted most, abandoned by the Jedi Order when he needed them, left to burn by his own master, the man who claimed to love him like a brother. The memories come flooding back with painful clarity. The moment when Obi-Wan had severed his limbs with a single, precise lightsaber stroke. The agony of lying helpless on the riverbank, feeling his life force ebbing away as the flames consumed what remained of his body. The crushing realization that everything he had sacrificed, everything he had done to save Padme, had been for nothing. He was hurt, Ahsoka says quietly, her voice cutting through the haze of his rage like a beacon of light in the darkness. Deeply, terribly hurt. But that doesn't make him weak, Master. It makes him human. Pain doesn't destroy who we are unless we let it. Suffering can teach us compassion if we're willing to learn from it instead of being consumed by it. Vader's lightsaber wavers slightly in his grip, the crimson blade casting shifting shadows on the walls of the control room. For a moment, just a moment, he sees himself through her eyes. Not the imposing figure of galactic terror that he has become, but a broken man struggling beneath layers of machinery and darkness, still fighting a war that ended 20 years ago. "You don't understand," he says, his voice quieter now but no less intense. "The things I've done, the choices I've made, there is no coming back from that darkness. I am what I am, and I cannot be what I was." Ahsoka reaches into her robes and withdraws a small holographic projector, no larger than her palm. With a gentle press of her finger, a blue image materializes in the space between them, and Vader's world suddenly stops spinning on its axis. Padme appears before him, young and beautiful, and heartbreakingly alive. Her brown hair flowing around her shoulders, her dark eyes bright with intelligence and compassion. She is dressed in the simple robes she favored during their secret moments together, when she was not Senator Amidala, but simply the woman he loved more than life itself. If you're watching this recording, Anakin, Padme's voice fills the chamber, as warm and musical as he remembers it. It means that I'm gone, and I'm so sorry for that. But I need you to know something. Something I should have told you before, but never found the courage to say. I believe in you. I believe in the good man you are, not the darkness that threatens to consume you. I know you're afraid. Afraid of losing me. Afraid of losing everything you hold dear. But fear is not your master unless you choose to let it be. Vader staggers backward as if struck by a physical blow, his lightsaber clattering to the floor as his hands rise to his helmet. The image of Padme continues to speak, her words cutting through 20 years of carefully constructed mental barriers like they were made of paper. Please, my love, for the sake of what we shared, for the sake of our dreams of a better galaxy, for the sake of our children, don't let the darkness win. There is still good in you. I know it. I can feel it. No matter what happens, no matter how far you fall. Remember that love is stronger than fear. Hope is stronger than despair. And light will always triumph over darkness if we have the courage to kindle it. The hologram flickers and fades, leaving Vader staring at the empty space where her image had been. His breathing is ragged now, the mechanical rhythm becoming erratic as his emotional state overwhelms the carefully calibrated systems that keep him alive. Children. The word escapes his vocabulator as barely more than a whisper. She said, children. Padme had children. Ahsoka nods slowly, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Luke and Leia, twins. They were born just before she died, hidden away to protect them from the Empire. From you. They're alive, Anakin. Your children live, and they're everything you and Padme hoped they would be. The revelation hits him like a supernova, searing through his consciousness with the force of 1,000 suns. Children. His children. Padme's children. The family he thought he had lost forever. Existing somewhere in the galaxy. Growing up without knowing their father's true identity. Luke. The name echoes in his mind like a bell tolling in a temple. The pilot who destroyed the Death Star. The young man he has been hunting across the galaxy without ever realizing the truth. His son. His own flesh and blood, strong in the Force, walking the path of a Jedi just as his father once had. And Leia. A daughter he never knew existed, hidden somewhere in the galaxy, carrying within her the legacy of both her parents. What must she be like? Does she have Padme's strength and intelligence? Does she have his connection to the Force? Has she inherited the best of both of them? Or has she been scarred by the knowledge of what her father became? The lightsaber falls from Vader's grip entirely now. The weapon that has been his constant companion for 20 years, suddenly feeling foreign and wrong in his hands. He stumbles backward until he hits the wall of the control room. His massive frame somehow looking small and vulnerable in his moment of revelation. I killed them. he whispers, the words torn from somewhere deep inside his chest. I killed them all. The younglings in the temple, the Jedi who trusted me, the innocents who stood in my way. How many children have died by my hand? How many families have I destroyed? And how many more will die if you continue down this path? Ahsoka asks, moving closer to him. How many more younglings? How many more innocents? How many more families? The past cannot be changed, Master, but the future still belongs to us. You have a choice to make. Vader slides down the wall until he is sitting on the floor, his cape pooling around him like spilled ink. For the first time in decades, he looks smaller than life, diminished by the weight of his own actions and the magnitude of what he has lost. I don't know how to come back from this, he admits, his voice barely audible over the background hum of the facility's systems. I've been Vader for so long. I don't remember how to be anything else. The darkness has become part of me, woven into my very existence. How do you separate a man from his shadow when the shadow has grown larger than the man? One step at a time, Ahsoka says gently, kneeling beside him. One choice at a time, one moment at a time. Redemption isn't about erasing the past or pretending that your actions didn't have consequences. It's about choosing to do better, to be better, starting right now. She places a hand on his shoulder, and for a moment, he feels something he hasn't experienced in 20 years. Peace. Not the cold, empty peace of the dark side, but the warm, living peace that comes from genuine human connection. The touch of someone who knew him before he fell, who remembers the man he used to be, who believes he can be that man again. Your children need their father, she continues. Not Darth Vader, but Anakin Skywalker. The galaxy needs him too. There's still so much good you could do, so much damage you could help repair. The Empire won't last forever, but the choices you make now will echo through generations. As they sit together in the ruins of his past, neither of them notices the small probe droid that has been recording their conversation from its hiding place among the facility's pipes and conduits. The mechanical spy transmits its data in real time across the galaxy, sending encrypted signals to a receiver aboard the Emperor's personal flagship. In his private throne room deep within the ship's most secure section, Emperor Palpatine sits motionless in his chair, watching the transmission with great interest. His yellow eyes gleam with malevolent amusement as he observes his apprentice's emotional breakdown, his thin lips curling into a smile that holds no warmth whatsoever. So, he murmurs to himself, his voice barely audible in the empty chamber. My young apprentice seeks redemption. How touching, how utterly predictable. Did he really think that 2 decades of faithful service would be forgotten over a single moment of weakness? The Emperor rises from his throne and moves to the massive transparisteel window that dominates one wall of the chamber. Beyond the reinforced barrier, stars wheel slowly past, as his flagship maintains its position in deep space, far from prying eyes and potential threats. But perhaps this presents an opportunity, Palpatine muses, his hands clasped behind his back. If Lord Vader wishes to reclaim his past, then I shall give him all of it. Every failure, every moment of pain, every choice that led him to the dark side. Let us see how long his newfound compassion lasts when confronted with the full weight of his sins. He reaches out through the Force, his consciousness spanning the vast distances between his flagship and the volcanic world, where his apprentice sits in contemplation. The dark side flows through him like a river of liquid shadow, carrying his will across the galaxy with the speed of thought. This is not mere telepathy, but something far more insidious, a direct assault on the mind and soul designed to crush hope before it can take root. The Emperor draws upon decades of accumulated dark side knowledge, channeling the power of ancient Sith techniques passed down through generations of masters. He reaches into the deepest recesses of Vader's memories, dragging forth every moment of pain, every act of violence, every choice that led him further from the light. The attack is surgical in its precision, designed not just to cause pain, but to convince its victim that redemption is impossible. Back on Mustafar, Anakin suddenly doubles over in agony as visions assault his mind with the force of a turbolaser barrage. The psychic attack hits him like a physical blow, sending him to his knees on the metal floor of the control room. His breathing apparatus cycles wildly as his body tries to cope with the overwhelming sensory input, flooding his consciousness. He sees the Tusken Raider camp burning in the Tatooine night, feels the sand beneath his feet, still warm with the blood of the slaughtered. The memory is so vivid he can smell the smoke, can hear the crackle of flames consuming the primitive shelters. He remembers the faces of the women and children who had tried to flee, their terror as they realized that the young Jedi they had expected to show mercy was instead consumed by rage and grief. The sickening satisfaction he had felt as his lightsaber cut them down returns full force, the dark joy that had coursed through him as he gave in to his hatred and pain. He remembers standing over their bodies, breathing heavily, covered in blood and sand, feeling for the first time the intoxicating power of the dark side. It had been so easy, so natural, like coming home after a long journey. Not just the men, he hears his own voice saying across the years, young and broken and filled with venom, but the women and the children too. They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them. No, he gasps, his hands pressing against the sides of his helmet, as if he could physically push the memories away. The metal of his life support system feels cold against his palms, a stark reminder of what his choices have cost him. That's not who I am anymore. But the visions continue, relentless and unforgiving, each one perfectly preserved in the crystal clarity of traumatic memory. The Emperor's assault intensifies, showing him every detail of his fall from grace, with the precision of a master torturer. He sees himself in the Jedi Temple, his lightsaber burning blue in the darkness of the council chambers, cutting down younglings who had looked to him for protection. The children's faces haunt him most of all. He remembers their names, their ages, their dreams of becoming Jedi Knights like their heroes. Little Saw's Bandim, only 4 years old, who had run up to him with joy, thinking he had come to rescue them. Zet Jukasa, barely a teenager, who had tried to fight back with a training saber. Before being cut down, they had trusted him, believed in him, looked to him as a symbol of everything good and noble in the galaxy. He feels their terror, their confusion, their desperate hope that someone would save them, even as he extinguished their young lives, one by one. He hears their voices calling for help that would never come. sees the light fading from their eyes, as they died not understanding why their protector had become their destroyer. The weight of their innocent blood presses down on him like a physical force, threatening to crush what remains of his sanity. "Fight it, Anakin!" Ahsoka grabs his shoulders, her own connection to the Force blazing like a star as she tries to shield him from the psychic assault. Her touch burns like fire against the darkness consuming him, a lifeline thrown into the abyss of his despair. "Don't let him pull you back into the darkness. You're stronger than this." But the Emperor's attack intensifies, drawing upon the vast reservoir of pain and guilt that Vader has carried for 20 years. The visions expand beyond the Temple massacre to encompass every atrocity he has committed in service to the Empire. He sees the rebel soldiers who died screaming as his Star Destroyer reduced their ships to expanding clouds of plasma and debris. Their final transmissions cut short as vacuum claimed their voices. He relives the interrogations, the executions, the casual brutality he has inflicted in the name of order and peace. He sees the faces of prisoners who had begged for mercy before his lightsaber ended their lives, remembers the satisfaction he had felt at their fear. He watches worlds burn under orbital bombardment ordered by his hand, sees entire species displaced or exterminated because they had dared to oppose imperial rule. The memories cascade through his mind like an avalanche of guilt and self-loathing. Admiral Ozzel, force-choked to death for a tactical mistake. Captain Nida, executed for losing the Millennium Falcon. Countless officers and soldiers who had served the Empire faithfully until one moment of failure brought them to Vader's attention. How many had died simply because he had been in a particularly dark mood that day? Anakin sees Padme on Polis Massa, her life force draining away as she gives birth to the children he will never know. The medical droid's instruments beep frantically as her vital signs fade, their mechanical voices reporting statistics that cannot capture the magnitude of what is being lost. She looks so small on the medical table, so fragile, her face pale but still beautiful even in death. He feels her last words like daggers in his heart. "There is still good in you. I know there is still." The love and faith in her voice make the pain infinitely worse, because he knows now how completely he has failed to live up to her belief in him. She had died believing in a man who no longer existed, placing her trust in someone who would become everything she despised. The visions shift to show him alternate futures, paths he might have taken if he had made different choices. He sees himself training Luke and Leia in the ways of the Force, teaching them to be the Jedi he never became. He watches himself working alongside Obi-Wan to rebuild the galaxy after the Clone Wars, using his power to heal rather than harm. He observes a universe where the Empire never rose, where democracy flourished, where his children grew up knowing their father as a hero rather than a monster. This could have been yours. The Emperor's voice whispers through the visions, silky and persuasive. All of this, if only you had been strong enough to seize it, but you were weak, confused by sentiment and misguided loyalty. You threw it all away for nothing, and now you dare to dream of redemption? You are beyond saving, beyond forgiveness, beyond hope. The psychic assault reaches its crescendo as Palpatine forces Anakin to experience not just his own memories, but the memories of his victims. He feels their pain as his lightsaber cuts them down, experiences their terror as his hands close around their throats, shares their despair as they realize that the man they had trusted has become their executioner. Each death he has caused echoes through his consciousness like a bell tolling in a temple of the dead. The weight of 20 years of murder and brutality crashes down on him all at once, threatening to shatter what remains of his sanity. He sees the faces of everyone he has killed, hears their final words, feels their last moments of life ebbing away under his hands. "I can't," he whispers, his voice breaking as the full magnitude of his crimes overwhelms him. "I can't escape what I've become. The blood on my hands, the suffering I've caused. It's too much. I'm lost, Ahsoka. I've been lost for so long, I don't even remember what it feels like to be found." His eyes begin to yellow again as the rage builds within him, fed by guilt and self-hatred and the overwhelming weight of his sins. The darkness calls to him like an old friend, promising to make the pain stop, to give him the strength to endure by simply ceasing to care about the consequences of his actions. It would be so easy to let go, to sink back into the comfortable numbness of the dark side, where feelings cannot hurt him and memories hold no power. For a moment, it seems as though the Emperor's gambit has succeeded. The red blade of Vader's lightsaber ignites in his trembling hand, casting bloody shadows on the walls of the control room. Ahsoka backs away, her own weapons ready, but her heart breaking, as she watches the man she once called Master disappearing once again behind the mask of the monster. But then she does something unexpected, something that catches both Anakin and the Emperor completely off guard. Instead of trying to pull him away from the darkness, she opens her own mind to it, allowing herself to experience a fraction of the pain and guilt that has been consuming him for 20 years. The psychic feedback nearly knocks her unconscious, her face going pale with shock as the weight of his crimes presses down on her consciousness. "I see it," she gasps, tears streaming down her face as she struggles to remain standing. "I see what you've carried all this time. The weight of it, the crushing guilt, the certainty that you're beyond redemption. But you're wrong, Master. You're wrong about everything." "How can you say that?" Anakin demands, his voice raw with anguish, the lightsaber wavering in his grip. "You've seen what I've done, what I've become. You've felt the darkness that lives inside me. How can there be any hope for someone like me?" "Because I've also seen what you were," Ahsoka replies, her voice steady, despite the tears and the residual pain from sharing his memories. "I've seen your courage when facing impossible odds, your compassion for those who couldn't defend themselves, your willingness to sacrifice everything for those you love. That man doesn't just disappear because he made terrible choices. He's still there, buried under 20 years of pain and darkness. But still there." She moves closer to him, unafraid of the weapon in his hands or the darkness radiating from his presence. The Anakin Skywalker I knew would never give up, no matter how impossible the situation seemed. He would find a way to make things right, to protect the innocent, to bring hope to those who had none. That man is still inside you, waiting for the chance to emerge. The Emperor's voice roars through the Force connection, trying to reassert his control over his wayward apprentice. "She lies. Hope is an illusion, redemption a fantasy. You are what you have made yourself, and nothing can change that. Embrace your nature. Embrace the power of the dark side." But something fundamental has shifted in the equation of Anakin's existence. The shared pain with Ahsoka has not diminished his guilt, but has somehow made it bearable, transformed it from a crushing weight into a source of strength. He realizes that redemption is not about erasing the past or forgetting his crimes, but about choosing to do better despite them. "You're right," he says to Ahsoka, his voice growing stronger as the yellow fades from his eyes. "The past cannot be changed, but the future still belongs to us. My children, they deserve better than Darth Vader for a father. The galaxy deserves better than the Empire for a government." The Emperor's influence presses against his mind like a weight, trying to drag him back down into the familiar embrace of the dark side. But Anakin has found something to anchor himself to the light. Not the absence of darkness, but the choice to kindle hope despite it. For the first time in 20 years, he has something to fight for besides his own pain. "Help me contact Luke," he says to Ahsoka, the words coming out in a rush, as if he's afraid he might lose his nerve if he hesitates. "It's time I met my son properly. Not as Darth Vader, hunter of Jedi, but as his father. As Anakin Skywalker." Ahsoka nods and activates her portable communications array, the device unfolding into a sophisticated transmission station with multiple encryption protocols and signal boosters. She enters a series of complex codes, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease born from years of coordinating rebel operations across the galaxy. "Luke." Her voice carries across the vast distances of space through secure rebel channels, bouncing off relay stations and hidden transmitters throughout the Outer Rim territories. "This is Fulcrum. I have someone here who wants to speak with you. Someone very important." There is a pause filled with the background static of long-range communications, the electronic whispers of signals traveling faster than light through hyperspace. When Luke's response comes, his voice is clear and strong despite the distance, carrying the same warmth and determination that once characterized his father. "Fulcrum? I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. Where are you? Are you safe? The Empire has been conducting massive sweeps through this sector. We've had to relocate the base twice in the past week." Anakin takes the communicator with hands that tremble slightly, the simple device feeling impossibly heavy in his grasp. 20 years of separation stretch between them like a chasm. 20 years of missed opportunities and lost chances. How do you bridge that kind of gap with words? How do you explain to your son that you've been the monster he's been fighting against? "Luke," he begins, his voice barely above a whisper, the words struggling to emerge past the lump in his throat. This is your father." The silence on the other end of the transmission seems to stretch for an eternity, filled with the weight of impossible revelations and shattered assumptions. When Luke finally responds, his voice carries a mixture of shock, hope, and the lingering caution of someone who has learned not to trust too easily. "Father? But you're Darth Vader. You're the Emperor's right hand, his chief enforcer. You've been hunting me across the galaxy, trying to turn me to the dark side or destroy me." "I was," Anakin admits, each word feeling like a confession pulled from the deepest parts of his soul. "I have been many things that I regret, done many things that shame me beyond measure. But I am also Anakin Skywalker, and you are my son. If you'll allow it, if you can find it in your heart to forgive me, I would like the chance to be your father." "I felt it," Luke says, his voice growing stronger and more confident. During our encounter in Cloud City, when you revealed the truth about my parentage, I felt the conflict in you, the pain, the struggle between light and dark. There was still good in you then, and I can hear it now in your voice. The conversation that follows lasts for hours. Father and son slowly bridging the gap that 20 years of separation has created between them. Anakin tells Luke about Padme, about their secret marriage, and the dreams he had of a different future. Luke speaks of his life on Tatooine, of the uncle and aunt who raised him, of his journey from farm boy to Jedi Knight. They discuss the Force, comparing their experiences and insights. Luke's training has been unconventional, lacking the formal structure of the old Jedi Order, while Anakin's understanding has been shaped by decades of both light and dark. Together, they begin to envision a new approach to the Force, one that acknowledges the existence of darkness without being consumed by it. Over the following days, Anakin begins the long, difficult process of active redemption. It starts with small acts of rebellion against his former master's will, carefully planned operations designed to weaken the Empire from within while avoiding detection. He uses his access codes to release political prisoners from Imperial detention centers, timing their escapes to coincide with shift changes and security rotations. He secretly transmits Imperial fleet movements to rebel cells throughout the galaxy, providing early warning of surprise attacks and enabling successful evacuations. The information is always accurate but carefully limited, enough to save lives without immediately revealing the source. Supply convoys carrying weapons to particularly brutal planetary governors mysteriously develop hyperdrive malfunctions, their cargo ending up in rebel hands. Each act of defiance feels like shedding another layer of the armor that has encased his soul for 20 years. The dark side fights back, trying to drag him down into the familiar patterns of anger and hatred. Palpatine's influence presses against his mind constantly now, no longer subtle but openly hostile, seeking to reassert control over his wayward apprentice. But Anakin has found something to anchor him to the light. The knowledge that his children live, that there is still hope for the galaxy, that redemption is possible even for someone like him. Every life he saves, every small victory against Imperial tyranny becomes another step on the path back to the man he once was. The changes do not go unnoticed by those around him. Imperial officers who have served under Vader for years begin to sense something different about their commander, though few can articulate exactly what has changed. He is still formidable in combat, still ruthlessly efficient in his duties, but there is something subtly different about his approach to command. Captain Piet, who has survived longer than most in Vader's service, is among the first to notice the changes. During a strategy meeting aboard the Executor, he observes that Vader's tactical recommendations have begun to prioritize minimizing civilian casualties rather than maximizing terror. Interrogations that once would have ended in execution now result in imprisonment. Orders that once would have demanded the complete destruction of rebel cells now specify capture when possible. Lord Vader, Piet ventures during one such meeting, his voice carefully neutral. Your recent tactical modifications have resulted in increased rebel activity in the outer rim sectors. Perhaps a more traditional approach would be more effective. Vader's helmet turns toward him with mechanical precision, and for a moment, Piet expects to feel the familiar crushing sensation of force-induced strangulation. Instead, Vader's response is measured, almost thoughtful. The Rebel Alliance grows stronger when we provide them with martyrs, Captain. Living prisoners can provide intelligence. Dead heroes can only inspire further resistance. It is a logical explanation, one that fits perfectly with Imperial doctrine. But Piet has served long enough to recognize the subtle shift in Vader's priorities. The Dark Lord is still playing his role, but the passion behind it has changed. Where once there was rage and hatred, now there is something approaching calculation, even restraint. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Luke Skywalker works to build the alliance between his father and the rebel leadership. It is a delicate process, requiring him to convince hardened freedom fighters that Darth Vader can be trusted, that the man who has been their greatest enemy might become their most powerful ally. Princess Leia Organa is among the most skeptical. Having witnessed the destruction of Alderaan, having seen firsthand the brutality of Imperial rule, she struggles to accept that Vader could be anything other than an irredeemable monster. The revelation that he is her father makes the situation even more complex, adding personal anguish to political necessity. "How can you ask me to trust him?" she demands during a heated discussion in the Rebel Command Center. "This man destroyed my home world, murdered my adoptive parents, spent 20 years enforcing the Empire's will through fear and violence. And now you want me to believe he's had a change of heart?" Luke's response is patient but firm. "I'm not asking you to forget what he's done or to forgive him immediately. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that people can change, that even someone who has fallen as far as he has can find their way back to the light." "And if you're wrong?" Leia asks. "If this is all some elaborate deception designed to infiltrate our leadership, if he betrays us to the Emperor, then we'll deal with that when it happens," Luke replies. "But I've felt his thoughts, Leia. I've sensed the conflict within him. This isn't a trick or a strategy. It's a man trying to atone for 20 years of darkness." The conversation is interrupted by an urgent communication from Admiral Akbar. Imperial forces have launched a massive assault on the rebel base at Sullust, and only advance warning from an anonymous source has allowed the evacuation to proceed. The intelligence was detailed and accurate, including Imperial recognition codes and fleet compositions that could only have come from someone with the highest level of access. The source identified himself only as Fulcrum's friend, Akbar reports, his amphibious features grave with concern. But the intelligence has proven completely accurate. Whoever provided this information has saved thousands of lives. Luke and Leia exchange glances, both understanding the implications. The anonymous source could only be Vader, using his position within the Imperial hierarchy to protect rebel operations. It is the first concrete evidence of his change of allegiance, proof that his words of redemption are backed by action. As weeks turn into months, the evidence accumulates. Imperial operations against rebel cells become increasingly ineffective, plagued by intelligence leaks and equipment failures. Political prisoners disappear from detention centers with suspicious regularity. Supply convoys carrying weapons to Imperial garrisons develop mysterious hyperdrive malfunctions. The Emperor, of course, is not blind to these developments. Through his network of spies and informants, he begins to piece together the pattern of sabotage and betrayal. The realization that his most trusted apprentice has turned against him fills him with a rage that burns like a star going supernova. In the depths of his private chambers aboard the Eclipse, Palpatine summons his most trusted advisors and agents. The meeting includes Grand Admiral Thrawn, whose analytical mind has already identified the source of the leaks, Mara Jade, whose surveillance has confirmed Vader's betrayal, and Director Krennic, whose loyalty to the Empire remains absolute despite his rivalry with Vader. Gentlemen, lady, the Emperor begins, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. We face a crisis that threatens the very foundations of our order. Lord Vader has chosen to betray everything we have built together. Seduced by the naive promises of redemption and the false hope of familial love, Grand Admiral Thrawn steps forward, his red eyes gleaming in the chamber's dim lighting. My Emperor, I have prepared several contingency plans for dealing with Lord Vader's defection. However, his power in the Force makes direct confrontation extremely risky. I recommend a more subtle approach. Explain, Palpatine commands, settling back into his throne with predatory interest. We know that Vader's newfound conscience stems from his connection to his children. Thrawn continues, his voice clinical in its precision. If we can threaten them directly, we can force him to choose between his redemption and their safety. No father, regardless of his convictions, can ignore such a choice. Mara Jade interjects, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. My Emperor, grant me permission to eliminate the Skywalker children personally. Their deaths will remove the source of Vader's weakness and restore him to your service. No, Palpatine says, raising a pale hand to forestall further discussion. The Skywalker bloodline is too valuable to simply destroy. Luke especially has shown tremendous potential in the Force. If Vader will not serve willingly, then perhaps his son can be convinced to take his place. Director Krennic, who has remained silent until now, clears his throat nervously. My Emperor, if I may suggest an alternative approach, the Death Star project nears completion, perhaps a demonstration of its power, targeting a world significant to the rebellion, would remind Lord Vader of the consequences of defiance. The Emperor's smile grows wider, more terrible. An interesting proposition, Director, but I believe the situation calls for something more personal. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure to the Endor system. It is time to bring this family reunion to its natural conclusion. As the Emperor begins implementing his final gambit, Anakin continues his secret work of undermining the Empire from within. But his activities have not gone completely unnoticed by Imperial forces. Several Star Destroyer captains have begun to question the unusual patterns in their orders, while ISB agents report increasing numbers of security breaches that seem to originate from the highest levels of command. The situation comes to a head during a raid on a rebel safe house on Corellia. Anakin, officially leading the operation to capture rebel leadership, instead uses his position to warn the targets and facilitate their escape. But this time, ISB Colonel Yularen has planted surveillance devices to monitor the operation, finally capturing concrete evidence of Vader's betrayal. The confrontation occurs in the abandoned safe house, its rooms still echoing with the sounds of hasty evacuation. Yularen emerges from concealment, flanked by a squad of Imperial commandos, their weapons trained on the Dark Lord of the Sith, Lord Vader, Yularen says, his voice heavy with disappointment and resolve. By order of Emperor Palpatine, You are under arrest for treason against the Empire." Anakin turns slowly to face his accusers, his cape billowing dramatically in the artificial breeze created by the building's failing environmental systems. For a moment, the weight of 20 years presses down on him. The accumulated momentum of a life spent in service to darkness and tyranny. "Colonel Yularen," he says, his voice carrying a note of genuine regret. "You have served the Empire faithfully for many years. Your loyalty has never been in question. But the Empire you serve is not the Republic we once fought to protect. The Republic fell because it was weak." Yularen snaps, his weathered features hard with conviction. "The Empire brought order to chaos, stability to anarchy. You helped build this order, Lord Vader. You cannot simply abandon it now because of sentiment and misguided nostalgia. I helped build a machine of oppression and fear," Anakin replies, his lightsaber remaining unignited at his side. "I turned the galaxy into a prison where freedom is a crime and hope is treason. That is not order, Colonel. That is tyranny." The confrontation escalates as Yularen orders his men to open fire. But their blaster bolts are effortlessly deflected by Vader's lightsaber. However, instead of killing his attackers as he once would have done, Anakin uses minimal force to disable them, leaving them unconscious but alive. It is a small mercy, but one that marks another step in his journey back to the light. Word of the incident reaches Emperor Palpatine within hours, carried by encrypted transmissions through the Empire's vast communication network. The news that his apprentice has openly defied Imperial forces in front of witnesses removes any remaining doubt about Vader's loyalty. The time for subtlety has passed. Now, only direct action remains. The Emperor accelerates his plans for the final confrontation, moving his personal fleet to the Endor system where the second Death Star nears completion. The massive battle station, even more powerful than its predecessor, will serve as both weapon and symbol in the coming conflict. Here, surrounded by the instruments of absolute power, Palpatine will face his wayward apprentice and reclaim control over the galaxy's destiny. As Imperial forces gather around Endor, the Rebel Alliance prepares for what may be their final battle against the Empire. Intelligence reports, some of them secretly provided by Vader himself, indicate that the Death Star's main weapon is operational, despite its incomplete external structure. The revelation transforms what was meant to be a surgical strike into a desperate gamble for the freedom of the galaxy. Luke Skywalker arrives on Endor ahead of the main Rebel fleet, accompanied by a small strike team tasked with disabling the Death Star's shield generator. But his true mission is more personal: to confront his father directly and convince him to stand openly against the Emperor, regardless of the consequences. The meeting takes place in the Forest Moon's ancient woods, among towering trees that have stood for millennia. Father and son face each other for the first time since Luke learned the truth of his parentage, no longer separated by the masks of their respective roles, but meeting as family. "Father," Luke says, his voice carrying both hope and uncertainty, "the time has come to choose. The Emperor knows about your betrayal. There's no going back to the way things were." Anakin removes his helmet, revealing his scarred but recognizably human face to his son for the first time. The gesture is both literal and symbolic, a casting off of the mask that has hidden his true nature for 20 years. "I know," he replies, his natural voice rough with disuse but unmistakably alive. I've known this moment was coming since I first chose to help the rebellion. But I'm ready now, Luke. Ready to face the consequences of my choices. Ready to stand with you against the darkness. The conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Imperial forces, led by a squad of Emperor's royal guards, whose crimson armor gleams in the filtered sunlight. They move with mechanical precision, surrounding the two Jedi with practiced efficiency. Lord Vader, the guard captain intones, his voice distorted by his helmet's vocal modifiers. Emperor Palpatine commands your immediate presence aboard the Death Star. You will come willingly, or you will be brought by force. Anakin ignites his lightsaber, the blue blade springing to life with its familiar snap hiss. The color has changed. No longer the crimson of the Sith, but the azure of the Jedi, marking his return to the light side of the Force. Tell the Emperor, he says, his voice carrying across the forest clearing with newfound authority, that Anakin Skywalker will come to him. But I come not as his apprentice, but as his enemy. The battle that follows is brief but intense. Father and son fighting side by side against the Emperor's elite guards. Their combined skills in the Force create a synergy that overwhelms even these highly trained opponents. And soon, the forest floor is littered with crimson armor and deactivated weapons. But even as they celebrate their victory, both Jedi can sense the massive presence of the Death Star looming overhead. Its completed superlaser already beginning to target the rebel fleet gathering in the system. The final confrontation can no longer be avoided. They must face the Emperor directly if they hope to save the galaxy from eternal darkness. The throne room of the Death Star II is a monument to Sith philosophy. Its soaring architecture, designed to dwarf visitors and emphasize the absolute power of its occupant. Emperor Palpatine sits upon his throne like a spider at the center of a vast web, his yellow eyes gleaming with malevolent satisfaction as he watches the approach of his former apprentice and the young Jedi who represents the future. "Welcome, young Skywalker," he says, his voice carrying across the vast chamber with perfect acoustics. "I have been expecting you. You no longer need those." He gestures dismissively at their lightsabers. Guards! But instead of the expected royal guards, the figures that emerge from the shadows are even more shocking. Inquisitors, thought to be extinct, ignite their spinning lightsabers with synchronized precision. Leading them is a figure that makes Anakin's blood run cold. The Grand Inquisitor somehow returned from death, his pale features twisted into a rictus of hate. "Surprised, Lord Vader?" Palpatine asks, his thin lips curling into a cruel smile. "Did you think death would prevent me from reclaiming my servants?" The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. The battle that erupts is unlike anything seen before in galactic history. Father and son fight back to back against opponents who know all their techniques, who have studied their every weakness and vulnerability. The Inquisitors attack with coordinated precision, their spinning blades creating a web of deadly energy that forces the two Jedi to fight defensively. But Luke and Anakin have something their opponents lack: trust. Where the Inquisitors rely on individual skill and dark side power, the Skywalkers fight as one, each anticipating the other's moves, each covering the other's weaknesses. Their lightsabers weave patterns of light through the darkness, creating openings that allow them to gradually thin the ranks of their enemies. As the last Inquisitor falls, bisected by Luke's perfectly timed strike, Emperor Palpatine finally rises from his throne. The ancient Sith Lord moves with surprising grace, his apparent frailty revealed as mere deception. Force, lightning crackles between his fingers as he prepares to unleash the full power of the dark side. "So be it, Jedi," he hisses, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "If you will not serve, then you will die. But first, you will watch as I destroy everything you hold dear." He gestures toward the throne room's massive viewport, through which the rebel fleet can be seen engaging the Imperial forces. As they watch, the Death Star's super laser begins to charge, its focusing dish glowing with barely contained energy. "Your rebel friends are doomed," Palpatine continues, his yellow eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure. "Their ships are no match for this battle station's firepower. Soon they will be nothing but expanding clouds of gas and debris, and the galaxy will know the price of defying my will." The psychological warfare proves effective. Luke moves toward the viewport, his face anguished as he watches rebel ships fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. His lightsaber wavers in his grip as emotion threatens to overcome his Jedi training. "Good," the Emperor purrs, sensing the young Jedi's distress. "Feel your anger. Let it flow through you. Strike me down with your hatred and take your father's place at my side." But Anakin steps between his son and the Emperor, his own lightsaber steady and sure. "No more games, Palpatine. No more manipulation. Your reign of terror ends here." The final duel between master and apprentice shakes the very foundations of the Death Star. Palpatine fights with all the fury and hatred he has accumulated over decades of Sith training, his scarlet blade weaving patterns of destruction through the air. But Anakin fights with something his former master has never possessed: balance. Not the cold emptiness of suppressed emotion that the old Jedi Order preached, but the warm, living balance that comes from accepting oneself completely, darkness and light together. His blade moves with fluid grace, each strike perfectly controlled, each defense precisely measured. The Emperor realizes, perhaps for the first time in his long life, that he is truly outmatched. This is not the broken, hate-filled apprentice he has controlled for 20 years. This is something new, something that combines the best aspects of both Jedi and Sith, while being limited by the weaknesses of neither. As the duel reaches its climax, Luke joins his father, their combined skills overwhelming even the Emperor's dark side mastery. Palpatine's lightsaber flies from his grasp, clattering across the throne room floor. The ancient Sith Lord staggers backward, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. "You cannot defeat me!" he screams, his careful mask of civilization finally stripped away entirely. "I am the dark side. I am eternal. I am power itself. You are nothing but a broken old man clinging to illusions of grandeur," Anakin replies, his lightsaber held steady at the Emperor's throat. "Your time is over. The galaxy will be free." In his final moments, Palpatine attempts one last desperate gambit. Reaching out through the Force, he tries to turn the Death Star's weapons on the Imperial fleet itself, intending to destroy everything rather than allow his enemies to claim victory. But Luke and Anakin, working together, sever his connection to the battle station's systems. The Emperor's death sends shockwaves through the Force that can be felt across the galaxy, marking the end of the Sith's thousand-year plan for revenge. On the forest moon of Endor, Ewoks emerge from their hiding places to celebrate alongside rebel commandos. In the depths of space, Imperial officers aboard Star Destroyers face a choice between continued allegiance to a dead cause or the possibility of redemption. Many choose surrender, their ships powering down weapons and opening communication channels with the rebel fleet. Others, too deeply indoctrinated to accept change, fight to the end, their vessels becoming funeral pyres for a dying regime. But the outcome is no longer in doubt. The Empire is finished, its dark heart finally stilled. The transformation of the galaxy proceeds with breathtaking speed, as if the removal of Palpatine's influence has unlocked potential that has been suppressed for decades. Entire sectors declare independence from Imperial rule within hours of the Emperor's death, their leaders finally free to act on long-suppressed desires for freedom and self-determination. The New Republic forms almost overnight, composed of thousands of worlds eager to embrace democracy after years of authoritarian oppression. But the transition is not without its challenges. On countless worlds, Imperial loyalists refuse to accept the new reality, leading to civil wars and insurgencies that threaten to tear apart the very fabric of galactic civilization. Former Imperial officers, their entire worldview shattered by their master's death, struggle to find meaning in a universe where everything they believed has been revealed as lies. Admiral Piet, perhaps Vader's most loyal subordinate during the Imperial era, faces his own crisis of conscience aboard the Star Destroyer Executor. As news of the Emperor's death spreads through the ship's communication systems, he finds himself confronting questions he never thought to ask during 2 decades of faithful service. "Sir," his communications officer reports, her voice uncertain, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 sectors in the Outer Rim. Local governors are asking for instructions, but there's no one left to give them." Piet stares at the tactical display showing the positions of Imperial fleets throughout the galaxy, each dot representing thousands of lives, suddenly cast adrift without purpose or direction. The machine of empire, so carefully constructed over the course of decades, is disintegrating before his eyes. "Signal the fleet," he says finally, his voice heavy with the weight of history. "All ships are to stand down and await further orders. No hostile actions against civilian populations or New Republic forces without direct provocation. It is a small decision, but one that saves millions of lives and helps establish the precedent for peaceful transition throughout much of the galaxy." Other Imperial commanders, seeing Piet's example, choose negotiation over destruction, surrender over revenge. Luke establishes his new Jedi Academy not on some remote world but on Coruscant itself, in the heart of galactic civilization, where it can serve as a beacon of hope and renewal. The location is carefully chosen, built on the site of the old Jedi Temple, but designed with an entirely different philosophy in mind. Where the ancient structure had been imposing and austere, the new academy emphasizes openness and accessibility. The curriculum Luke develops draws upon both traditional Jedi teachings and the hard-won wisdom of his father's experiences with both light and dark. Classes cover not just lightsaber technique and force abilities, but philosophy, ethics, galactic history, and conflict resolution. Students learn that a Jedi's greatest weapon is not their lightsaber, but their ability to understand and empathize with others. The Academy's most popular class is taught by Anakin himself, a seminar on the nature of temptation and the pathway to redemption. His lessons are drawn from personal experience, unflinching examinations of how good intentions can lead to terrible consequences, and how even the most lost souls can find their way back to the light. The dark side is not evil because it is powerful, he tells his students during one memorable lecture, his scarred face serious but not unkind. It is dangerous because it is easy. It offers simple solutions to complex problems. Strength without wisdom, power without responsibility. When you are afraid, it whispers that fear can be conquered through control. When you are angry, it promises that vengeance will bring peace. These are lies, but they are seductive lies. A young Twi'lek student raises her hand, her expression troubled. Master Skywalker, if the dark side is so dangerous, how do we resist it? How do we know when we're being tempted? Anakin considers the question carefully before responding, drawing upon decades of hard-won wisdom. By staying connected to others, the dark side isolates us, convinces us that we alone understand the truth, that others cannot be trusted with the decisions that matter. When you find yourself believing that you know better than everyone else, when you start to think that the ends justify any means, that's when you need to step back and listen to the voices of those who care about you. Students learn not to fear their emotions, but to understand them, not to suppress their passions, but to channel them toward constructive ends. The rigid dogma of the old order is replaced by a more flexible philosophy that acknowledges the complexity of the Force and the beings who wield it. Love, once forbidden to Jedi, is now recognized as one of the most powerful forces for good in the galaxy. Students are encouraged to form deep connections with others, to build families and communities that can provide support and guidance throughout their lives. The Academy itself becomes a kind of family, with masters and students working together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Anakin Skywalker becomes the Academy's most valued instructor. His unique experiences, allowing him to guide students away from the temptations of the dark side, while helping them find their own paths to balance. His classes are always packed, young Force sensitives eager to learn from the man who has walked through hell and returned to tell the tale. But his teaching extends beyond formal instruction. Late at night, students often find him in the Academy's meditation gardens, sitting quietly among the plants from 1,000 worlds that somehow thrive together in carefully maintained harmony. These informal conversations, conducted under starlight and surrounded by the gentle sounds of growing things, often prove more valuable than any formal lesson. Master, a young human boy asks during one such session, "Why did you choose to come back to the light? After everything you'd done, wouldn't it have been easier just to give up?" Anakin looks up at the stars, visible through the garden's transparent dome, each point of light representing countless worlds where beings struggle with their own choices between good and evil. "I had children," he says simply. "Luke and Leia. Even when I didn't know they existed, even when I thought I had lost everything, they were out there carrying the best parts of their mother and father forward into the future. The possibility of redemption existed because love had survived, because hope had endured. The process of galactic healing is neither quick nor easy. There are many who cannot forgive the former Darth Vader for his crimes, who see his redemption as too little, too late. War crimes tribunals examine his actions during the Imperial era, and he testifies honestly about everything he has done, accepting responsibility without making excuses or attempting to justify his actions through circumstance. The proceedings are broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions who have suffered under Imperial rule. Some call for his execution, arguing that no amount of good works can balance the scales of his past evil. Others advocate for mercy, pointing to his role in destroying the Emperor and saving the galaxy from eternal darkness. The debate rages across countless worlds, in legislative chambers and cantinas alike, reflecting the complex moral questions raised by his transformation. Senator Bail Organa, one of the architects of the rebellion and Leia's adoptive father, speaks eloquently before the tribunal about the nature of justice and redemption. "We are faced with a choice," he says, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent fighting tyranny. "We can choose vengeance, which might satisfy our anger, but will teach us nothing about preventing future atrocities. Or we can choose justice tempered by wisdom, which acknowledges the past while building toward a better future." His words carry special weight because he has personally suffered under Imperial rule, has seen his adopted homeworld of Alderaan destroyed by the very machine Vader helped create. Yet he argues for conditional amnesty, not because Vader deserves forgiveness, but because the galaxy deserves healing. In the end, the New Republic chooses a path of conditional amnesty. Anakin is forbidden from holding any official government position, and his movements are monitored by Republic intelligence services. But he is allowed to continue teaching at the Academy, using his experiences to help prevent future falls to the dark side. He must also dedicate a portion of his time to humanitarian work, helping rebuild worlds damaged by Imperial rule. The decision satisfies few completely, but represents a compromise that most can live with. More importantly, it establishes precedent for dealing with other former Imperial officials who seek redemption, creating a framework for healing rather than vengeance. Princess Leia, now a leading figure in the New Republic government, struggles, perhaps most of all, with accepting her father's transformation. The revelation of their relationship had been shocking enough, but learning to see him as something other than a monster proves even more difficult. She has spent her entire adult life fighting against everything he represented, has seen firsthand the suffering caused by Imperial policies he helped implement. Their first meeting as acknowledged family takes place in the Academy's meditation gardens, surrounded by plants from 1,000 worlds that somehow thrive together in carefully maintained harmony. The symbolism is not lost on either of them, though neither comments on it directly. "I still don't understand how you can teach children about the light side of the Force," Leia says, her voice carefully controlled but betraying the emotional turmoil beneath. "How do you help them avoid the same mistakes you made when you couldn't avoid them yourself?" Anakin considers her question carefully before responding, understanding that this conversation is about far more than pedagogy. By telling them the truth about the power of fear, about how easy it is to justify terrible acts when you believe you're protecting something you love, about the seductive nature of power and the corrupting influence of anger. He pauses, looking out over the garden where young students practice their lessons under the watchful eyes of their instructors. But mostly by showing them that redemption is possible, that even someone who has fallen as far as I have can find their way back to the light. If I can change, anyone can. "But what about the people you killed?" Leia asks, her voice rising despite her efforts to remain calm. "What about the worlds you helped destroy? What about Alderaan? Your redemption doesn't bring back the dead. The accusation hangs in the air between them, like a physical presence, and for a moment, Anakin feels the familiar weight of guilt threatening to crush him. But he has learned to carry that weight without being destroyed by it, to acknowledge his crimes without being paralyzed by them. "You're right," he says quietly. "Nothing I do can undo the past or restore what was lost. But I can choose how to spend whatever time remains to me. I can choose to prevent others from making the same mistakes, to build something better from the ashes of what was destroyed." The conversation that follows lasts for hours. Sister and father slowly building the foundation of a relationship that neither had ever expected to have. It is not easy. Too much pain has accumulated between them for simple forgiveness. But they find common ground in their shared commitment to building a better future for the galaxy. Gradually, over months and years, their relationship evolves from mutual suspicion to grudging respect to something approaching genuine affection. Leia never fully forgives him for his past, but she learns to see him as he is now, rather than only as he was then. And Anakin, for his part, never asks for forgiveness he knows he doesn't deserve, focusing instead on proving through actions that his transformation is genuine. Luke's relationship with his father develops more easily, built as it is on the foundation of their shared experiences and mutual respect. They train together daily, father teaching son advanced techniques, while learning in return about the innovative approaches Luke has developed during his unconventional education. Their sparring sessions become legendary at the Academy, demonstrations of what the Force can accomplish when wielded with both skill and wisdom. Students gather to watch as two lightsabers dance through complex patterns, their wielders moving with a coordination that speaks to deep understanding and trust. "Remember," Anakin tells his son during one such session, their blades locked in a contest of strength. "The Force is not a tool to be used, but a living energy that connects all things. Work with it, not against it." Luke nods, feeling the truth of his father's words resonate through his being. With a sudden shift in technique, he breaks the blade lock and spins away, his lightsaber moving in harmony with the Force rather than fighting against it. The movement is perfect, economical, and effective without being showy or wasteful. "Good," Anakin says, deactivating his weapon and smiling with genuine pride. "You're beginning to understand. Power without wisdom is destruction, but wisdom without power is helplessness. Balance is the key to everything." But perhaps the most significant relationship in Anakin's new life is the one he builds with the memory of Padmé. Her tomb on Naboo becomes a place of pilgrimage for him, a quiet space where he can speak to her spirit and seek guidance for the challenges he faces. The tomb itself is a masterwork of Nubian architecture, its flowing lines and organic curves reflecting the planet's aesthetic philosophy. Gardens surround the structure, filled with flowers that bloom in rotation throughout the year, ensuring that color and life are always present, even in this place of death and remembrance. "I kept your hollow projector," he tells her during one such visit, placing the small device on her sarcophagus with hands that no longer tremble. "Ahsoka showed me your message, the one where you said there was still good in me. I didn't believe it then, I couldn't imagine how someone like me could ever be worthy of your faith. The wind through the tomb's columns carries the scent of Naboo's eternal spring, and for a moment, he can almost sense her presence, warm and loving and eternal. It is probably imagination, but it comforts him nonetheless. But I understand now. He continues, his voice growing stronger. Redemption isn't about becoming worthy of forgiveness. It's about choosing to do better, to be better, regardless of whether anyone else believes in you. Luke and Leia. They're everything you hoped they would be. Strong and compassionate and committed to justice. They're your legacy as much as mine. Years pass, and the galaxy continues to heal from the wounds inflicted by decades of war and oppression. The Jedi Academy graduates its first class of new knights, young men and women who understand the Force not as a tool of war, but as a means of service and protection. Some become healers, using their abilities to cure diseases and repair the damage done by Imperial brutality. Master Silgal, a Mon Calamari who had lost her family during the siege of Mon Cala, dedicates her life to developing new Force healing techniques that can mend both physical wounds and psychological trauma. Others serve as mediators, helping resolve conflicts between worlds and species with wisdom rather than force. They establish a new tradition of diplomatic Jedi, knights who specialize in understanding different cultures and finding common ground between seemingly incompatible viewpoints. Still, others explore the mysteries of the Force itself, seeking to understand its true nature and purpose. They journey to ancient temples and forgotten worlds, uncovering knowledge that had been lost during the dark years of Imperial rule and Sith dominance. Anakin watches their graduation ceremony with pride, tempered by humility. These young people represent everything the Jedi Order should have been, free from the dogma and restrictions that had contributed to his own fall. They will face temptations and challenges, but they do so with better preparation and greater understanding than his generation had possessed. The ceremony takes place in the Academy's main hall, its soaring ceiling decorated with star maps that show the current positions of every inhabited world in the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species attend, their diverse forms a testament to the Republic's commitment to inclusion and diversity. Luke delivers the keynote address, his words carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. You go forth not as soldiers, but as servants, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Remember that the greatest victories are won not with lightsabers, but with understanding, not through force, but through compassion. As the new knights receive their assignments, Anakin reflects on how different this ceremony is from those of his youth. Where the old order had emphasized duty and detachment, this new generation is taught to embrace connection and emotional honesty. Where his peers had been trained to suppress their feelings, these knights are encouraged to understand and channel them constructively. On his 70th birthday, Anakin Skywalker stands in the Academy's main hall, surrounded by hundreds of students and colleagues who have gathered to honor his contributions to their order. The irony is not lost on him that the man once known as the galaxy's greatest villain has become one of its most respected teachers. The hall is decorated with symbols representing the many worlds he has helped heal during his years of redemption. Holographic displays show before and after images of planets where his humanitarian work has made a difference. Orphanages rebuilt on worlds devastated by Imperial occupation, medical facilities established in refugee camps, infrastructure restored on planets abandoned during the chaos following the Empire's collapse. Luke steps forward to address the assembly, his words carrying the weight of a lifetime's experience. My father once told me that redemption isn't about erasing the past, but about choosing to do better in the future. Tonight, we celebrate not just his birthday, but the choices he has made every day for the past 25 years to honor that principle. The applause that follows is warm and genuine, a testament to the transformation that seemed impossible so many years ago on the volcanic surface of Mustafar. As Anakin looks out over the faces of those who have gathered to honor him, he sees hope for the future of the galaxy, proof that even the darkest night must eventually give way to dawn. Among the crowd, he spots faces that represent the full spectrum of his journey. Admiral Piet, now serving as an advisor to the New Republic military, nods respectfully from his position near the back of the hall. Senator Mothma, one of the founders of the rebellion, offers a smile that speaks to forgiveness earned through decades of service. But it is the presence of his children that means the most to him. Luke and Leia stand together at the front of the assembly, their faces reflecting pride in the man their father has become. Leia's own children, Ben and Jaina, watch with the wide-eyed fascination of youngsters meeting a living legend. The celebration continues late into the night, with stories shared and friendships renewed. Former enemies embrace as allies, their past conflicts transformed into bonds of mutual respect. It is a testament to the power of redemption, proof that even the most bitter divisions can be healed through time and understanding. In the Academy's archives, preserved for future generations, is a recording of Padme Amidala's final message to her husband. Her words, spoken in love and faith during her darkest hour, proved prophetic in ways she could never have imagined. There is still good in you. Her voice whispers across the years, as true now as it was then. I know, there is still. And in the end, that knowledge, that faith, that unshakable belief in the power of love to overcome hatred had been enough to save not just one man's soul, but the freedom of an entire galaxy. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. I can't, he whispers, his voice breaking. I can't escape what I've become. The blood on my hands, the suffering I've caused. It's too much. I'm lost, Ahsoka. I've been lost for so long, I don't even remember what it feels like to be found. For a moment, it seems as though the Emperor's gambit has succeeded. Anakin's eyes begin to yellow again as the rage builds within him, fed by guilt and self-hatred and the overwhelming weight of his crimes. The darkness calls to him like an old friend, promising to make the pain stop, to give him the strength to endure by simply ceasing to care about the consequences of his actions. But then Ahsoka does something unexpected. Instead of trying to pull him away from the darkness, she opens her own mind to it, allowing herself to experience a fraction of the pain and guilt that has been consuming him for 20 years. She staggers under the weight of it, her face pale with shock, but she does not let go. I see it, she gasps, tears streaming down her face. I see what you've carried all this time. The weight of it, the crushing guilt, the certainty that you're beyond redemption. But you're wrong, Master. You're wrong about everything. How can you say that? Anakin demands, his voice raw with anguish. You've seen what I've done, what I've become. How can there be any hope for someone like me? Because I've also seen what you were, Ahsoka replies, her voice steady, despite the tears. I've seen your courage, your compassion, your willingness to sacrifice everything for those you love. That man doesn't just disappear because he made terrible choices. He's still there, buried under 20 years of pain and darkness, but still there. She helps him to his feet, supporting his weight as he struggles to regain his composure. The Anakin Skywalker I knew would never give up, no matter how impossible the situation seemed. He would find a way to make things right, to protect the innocent, to bring hope to those who had none. That man is still inside you, waiting for the chance to emerge. Anakin straightens slowly, his breathing gradually returning to its normal mechanical rhythm. When he speaks again, his voice is different somehow, carrying echoes of the man he used to be beneath the electronic distortion of his vocabulator. I don't know if I can be him again, he says quietly, but perhaps I can try to be someone he wouldn't be ashamed of. Someone my children could be proud to call father. The Emperor's influence presses against his mind like a weight, trying to drag him back down into the familiar embrace of the dark side. But something has changed in the fundamental equation of Anakin's existence. For the first time in 20 years, he has something to fight for besides his own pain. He has hope. Help me contact Luke, he says to Ahsoka, the words coming out in a rush, as if he's afraid he might lose his nerve if he hesitates. It's time I met my son properly, not as Darth Vader, but as his father. Ahsoka nods and activates her portable communications array, the device unfolding into a sophisticated transmission station. She enters a series of encryption codes, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. Luke. Her voice carries across the galaxy through secure rebel channels. This is Fulcrum. I have someone here who wants to speak with you. Someone important. There is a pause, filled with the background static of long-range communications. Then a young voice responds, clear and strong despite the distance. Fulcrum, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Where are you? Are you safe? Anakin takes the communicator with hands that tremble slightly, the simple device feeling impossibly heavy in his grasp. 20 years of separation, 20 years of missed opportunities, 20 years of being the monster his son has been trained to fear. How do you bridge that kind of gap with words? Luke, he begins, his voice barely above a whisper. This is your father. The silence on the other end of the transmission seems to stretch for an eternity. When Luke finally responds, his voice is filled with a mixture of shock, hope, and lingering fear. Father, but you're Darth Vader. You're the Emperor's enforcer. You've been hunting me across the galaxy. I was, Anakin admits, each word feeling like a confession pulled from the deepest parts of his soul. I have been many things that I regret, done many things that shame me, but I am also Anakin Skywalker, and you are my son. If you'll allow it, I would like the chance to be your father. I felt it, Luke says, his voice growing stronger. During our encounter over Bespin, when you told me the truth about my parentage, I felt the conflict in you, the pain, the struggle between light and dark. There was still good in you then, and I can hear it now. Over the following days, Anakin begins the long, difficult process of redemption. It starts with small acts of rebellion against his former master's will. He secretly transmits Imperial fleet movements to rebel cells, allowing them to avoid costly confrontations. He uses his access codes to release political prisoners from Imperial detention centers. He sabotages weapons shipments destined for particularly ruthless planetary governors. Each act of defiance feels like shedding another layer of the armor that has encased his soul for 20 years. The dark side fights back, trying to drag him down into the familiar patterns of anger and hatred. But now he has something to anchor him to the light, the knowledge that his children live, that there is still hope for the galaxy, that redemption is possible even for someone like him. The Emperor, of course, is not idle during this period. Sensing his apprentices' growing rebellion through their connection in the Force, Palpatine begins making preparations to replace Vader entirely. If the Chosen One will not serve the dark side willingly, then he will be destroyed and another will take his place. The Sith have always been defined by the rule of two, but Palpatine has grown beyond such limitations. He has contingencies within contingencies, backup plans for his backup plans. The climactic confrontation comes sooner than anyone expects. During what is supposed to be a routine inspection of the second Death Star's construction over the forest moon of Endor, Palpatine springs his carefully prepared trap. The rebel fleet, lured into battle by false intelligence about the battle station's capabilities, faces annihilation at the hands of a fully operational super laser. But the Emperor has a more personal agenda as well. In the throne room high above the battle, he confronts his wayward apprentice with the full knowledge of his recent betrayals. "Lord Vader," Palpatine says, his voice dripping with cold amusement as he settles into his throne. Or should I say, Anakin Skywalker, did you really think your pathetic attempts at redemption would go unnoticed? Did you imagine that 2 decades of faithful service would be forgotten because of a few moments of sentimental weakness? Anakin stands before his former master, no longer wearing the full Vader armor, but a modified life support suit that allows him to breathe while revealing his scarred but human face. The sight is both shocking and liberating. The man finally emerging from behind the mask of the machine. "I am no longer your apprentice, Palpatine," he says, his voice carrying new strength despite its electronic modulation. "I serve the Force itself now, not your twisted vision of order. The galaxy deserves better than the empire you've built on a foundation of fear and hatred." How disappointing, the Emperor muses, rising from his throne with fluid grace. "I had such hopes for you, young Skywalker. Together, we could have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, brought order to chaos, imposed our will upon the stars themselves. Instead, you choose to throw away everything we've built for the sake of sentiment and misguided idealism. I choose to remember who I was before you corrupted me," Anakin replies, his hand moving to the lightsaber at his side. "I choose to be the man my children can be proud of, the man Padme believed I could become." "Then you will die." Palpatine's facade of civilized discourse drops away like a discarded mask, revealing the Sith Lord beneath. Force lightning erupts from his fingertips, crackling across the throne room with the power to reduce a human being to ash in seconds. But Anakin is ready this time. Using techniques that Ahsoka taught him during their time together on Mustafar, he creates a barrier of light that deflects the dark energy back toward its source. The Emperor staggers under the force of his own attack, his yellow eyes widening with surprise and growing anger. Impossible. Palpatine snarls, his perfect composure finally cracking. The dark side is stronger. It will always be stronger. No, Anakin says, advancing step by step toward his former master. Balance is stronger. Light and dark together. In harmony rather than conflict. Acceptance rather than denial. Love rather than fear. The battle that follows is unlike any lightsaber duel in recorded history. It is not just a contest of skill and power, but a fundamental conflict between two opposing philosophies of existence. Palpatine fights with all the fury and hatred he has accumulated over decades of Sith training, his scarlet blade weaving patterns of destruction through the air. But Anakin fights with something his master has never possessed. Peace. Not the cold emptiness of suppressed emotion that the old Jedi Order preached, but the warm, living peace that comes from accepting oneself completely, darkness and light together. His blade moves with fluid grace, each strike perfectly balanced between power and control, aggression and restraint. The Emperor realizes, perhaps for the first time in his long life, that he is outmatched. This is not the broken, hate-filled apprentice he has controlled for 20 years. This is something new, something that combines the best aspects of both Jedi and Sith, while being limited by the weaknesses of neither. Palpatine makes one final, desperate gambit. Reaching out through the Force, he attempts to turn Anakin's own emotions against him, flooding his mind with images of Luke and Leia in danger, of the rebel fleet being destroyed by the Death Star's superlaser, of everything he loves being consumed by Imperial fire. But the visions have no power over him now. Anakin has learned to feel fear without being controlled by it, to experience anger without being consumed by it, to know loss without being destroyed by it. The emotions flow through him like water through a sieve, acknowledged but not allowed to dictate his actions. With a final, perfectly executed sequence of strikes, Anakin breaks through his former master's defenses. The Emperor's lightsaber flies from his grasp, clattering across the throne room floor. Palpatine staggers backward, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. "You were supposed to be mine," he screams, the careful mask of civilization finally stripped away entirely. "I created you. I shaped you. You belong to me." "I belong to myself," Anakin replies, his lightsaber held steady at the Emperor's throat. "And through myself, to my family, to the galaxy, to the Force itself. Your reign of terror ends here." The Emperor's death sends shockwaves through the Force that can be felt across the galaxy. On the forest moon of Endor, Luke Skywalker looks up from his battle with Imperial forces, sensing his father's triumph. In the rebel fleet, Admiral Akbar orders the attack on the Death Star to proceed, knowing that their primary objective has been achieved. But the most profound change occurs in the hearts and minds of billions of Imperial citizens who have lived under Palpatine's rule for more than 2 decades. With the Emperor's dark influence removed from the equation, many begin to question the system they have served so faithfully. Star Destroyer captains surrender to rebel forces rather than fight pointless battles for a dead cause. Planetary governors declare independence from imperial rule. Entire sectors turn against the Empire in a matter of hours. The galaxy transforms with breathtaking speed, as if awakening from a long, dark dream. The New Republic forms almost overnight, composed of former imperial systems that have thrown off the yoke of authoritarian rule. Luke establishes a new Jedi Academy, not on some remote world, but on Coruscant itself, in the heart of galactic civilization, where it can serve as a beacon of hope and renewal. And Anakin Skywalker, no longer Darth Vader, but not quite the man he used to be either, becomes something entirely new. He serves as a teacher at the Academy, helping to train a new generation of Force users in the ways of balance rather than extremism. His students learn not to fear their emotions, but to understand them, not to suppress their passions, but to channel them toward constructive ends. The process is not easy. There are many among the New Republic who cannot forgive him for his crimes as Vader, who see his redemption as too little, too late. There are families he has destroyed who will never accept his apologies, victims who cannot find it in their hearts to offer forgiveness. He bears their hatred as he bears everything else now, with patience and understanding, knowing that redemption is not about earning forgiveness from others, but about finding peace with oneself. Ahsoka watches from the Academy's meditation gardens as Anakin instructs a group of young students in the basics of lightsaber combat. His movements are slower now, more deliberate, each technique demonstrated with careful precision rather than the flashy acrobatics of his youth. But there is something profoundly peaceful about the way he teaches, a sense of hard-won wisdom that comes only from having touched the very depths of darkness and chosen to climb back toward the light. "Thank you," she whispers to the memory of Padme Amidala, whose faith in the power of love had ultimately proven stronger than the Emperor's mastery of fear. He found his way home after all. Luke and Leia visit often, gradually building relationships with the father they never knew. It is not easy for any of them. Too much time has passed. Too much pain has accumulated for them to simply pick up where they left off. But love, Anakin learns, is not about perfection. It is about persistence, about choosing again and again to care for someone despite their flaws and failures. Leia, now a leader in the New Republic Senate, struggles more than Luke with accepting her father's transformation. She has lived her entire life fighting against the empire he helped create, has seen firsthand the suffering his actions caused. But gradually, as she watches him work tirelessly to undo the damage he has done, she begins to understand that redemption is not about forgetting the past, but about taking responsibility for the future. The galaxy enters a new golden age, guided not by the rigid dogma of the old Jedi Order or the iron fist of the Empire, but by a philosophy of balance and understanding. Force-sensitive individuals are no longer forced to choose between absolute light and absolute darkness, but are taught to navigate the spectrum between them with wisdom and compassion. And on Mustafar, where it all began, a new kind of monument is erected. Not a statue or a building, but a living garden where somehow, against all odds, life has begun to flourish in the volcanic soil. Visitors come from across the galaxy to see the place where Anakin Skywalker died and was reborn, where the power of love proved stronger than the allure of hatred, where redemption became possible even in the most unlikely circumstances. The garden grows slowly, tended by droids and volunteers who understand its symbolic importance. Each plant that takes root in the harsh soil represents another small victory over the darkness. Another proof that even the most barren places can bloom again if given enough care and patience. Standing in the garden on the anniversary of his transformation, Anakin reflects on the journey that brought him to this point. The path from darkness to light has not been straight or easy, marked by setbacks and struggles that continue to this day. But it has been his path, chosen freely rather than imposed by others, walked step by step rather than leaped across in a single bound. The Force flows around him now with a harmony he has never experienced before. Light and dark in perfect balance, past and future united in an eternal present moment. He is no longer the chosen one of prophecy, no longer the fallen Jedi of legend, no longer the Sith Lord of nightmare. He is simply a man who has learned that the greatest victory is not over others, but over oneself. That the most profound strength comes not from power, but from compassion. That the truest wisdom lies not in certainty, but in the courage to keep learning, growing, and becoming. As the twin suns of Mustafar set over the volcanic landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Anakin Skywalker smiles for the first time in 20 years. It is not a perfect smile, scarred as it is by the trials he has endured, but it is genuine. And in that moment, surrounded by new life growing in the place where he once lost everything, he knows that redemption is not just possible but inevitable for anyone willing to take the first step. The future stretches ahead, uncertain, but filled with hope. There will be new challenges, new conflicts, new choices to be made. But whatever comes, he will face it not as the Dark Lord he became, but as the man he has chosen to be. A father, a teacher, a guardian of the light, and a living reminder that no one is ever truly lost as long as love endures. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.